Each week on the $1 Million Flip Flops podcast with your host, me, Rodric, we talk with game changers and thought leaders from across the globe. These are business leaders that are leaving an indelible mark on our society, whether we realize it or not. No topic is off limits, from information to technology to just general business or even families and spirituality. Nothing is left untouched. We're not here just to scratch the surface. We're here to actually dive into the business mind of other CEOs across the globe and just have a conversation. But you get a front row seat to that every week. So I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If there's anything you would like to hear on your end or anyone you would recommend as a guest, please don't hesitate to reach out. Let's get to the show. How did you end up on TEDx stages? You know, you're a speaker now, but give me the backstory a little bit. Like, you know, was that always a dream of yours, or did it just kind of, you're like me, you just walk through open doors? Or
funny, man. One of the things about the stories we tell ourselves is that there's always multiple perspectives. And so I always tell the story like there's really two versions of the hero's journey, right? There's like the insecure little boy me who was traumatized version and how I came from like nothing to something or whatever. And then there's like the enlightened version of me that knew deep down inside that I was always called to the level of greatness that I'm stepping into more and more every day. What do I want to lean into? I'll lean into the kind of the trauma story because that's what feels right now. Born inner city, man. Only way I knew to get out of the hood was to either be a rapper or to be an athlete. So I decided I was going to do both.
The notorious B.I.G.
Wasn't that
method.
good at rapping. I got a couple of nursery rhymes, man. I can put some bars together, but
I love it.
That wasn't it. But was ultimately became super successful in athletics. My dad was an athlete. His sister was qualified for the Olympics. She actually didn't participate because she got addicted to cocaine. But I had that athletic gene, and man, I just excelled. Top 100 in the nation, full ride scholarships in football and basketball to play at a lot of Division I colleges. Chose Central Michigan University because they were supposed to allow me to play both sports. The other part to note in this is like, man, sports wasn't just a way out of the hood. It was also a way that I gained love, acceptance, validation, because growing up in my community, I was teased for being a Black kid that talked and acted white. And so essentially, I changed everything about myself to fit in with this African-American community, changed the way that I talk, the music I listened to, the way that I laugh. I literally was an all-A student at one point, perfect attendance, and I started skipping school, selling drugs, just to, you know, gain acceptance from this African-American community. And what I noticed is that when I was rising the ranks in sports, man, I didn't feel that internal pull between my white friends and my Black friends as much, because they didn't care if I was like going to the bonfires with the white people or I was in the basement parties with the Blacks. They just cared that I was an elite athlete and had all this like, you know, notoriety and was playing with all these high level people. And so when I came into my true freshman year, I played a little bit, I got hurt, had an injury, and it should have been the end of my career. But because I had so much of my identity wrapped up into what I do, which is a dangerous place to be for people, right? Like when our identity becomes so attached to something outside of ourselves, whether that's work, whether that's a relationship, whether that's a persona of who I think I should be, it's very detrimental to who we authentically are. I didn't want to face that kind of shadow. And so I basically came back after back surgery way too soon, earned a starting position, and basically put myself through 2 years of, man, hell. Got addicted to opioids, started taking them to numb my physical pain so I can play sport. And I was still able to, because unhealthy was better than, you know, the next guy that was fully healthy.
Right.
And so taking these opioids to numb physical pain, started taking them to numb my emotional pain from knowing that my career was coming to an end as an athlete. Now, here's kind of the other narrative of the business Buddha, right? Like there was always this under thread in this story of like, when I was 9 years old, I went to this church service. I saw this vision of me in front of a sea of people. And I felt like internally, I heard God tell me like, hey, you're called to this level of greatness and influence in life. And so a lot of this like drug life and persona and using sports to fit in was really in avoidance of that still small, like internal pull to be a leader, to be a speaker, to be an influencer. And so this was going on. And when I started to see that athletics was coming in, I think subconsciously, I knew that I was supposed to step into that type of leadership. And man, I started to just use those drugs to numb that emotional pain because I was scared. Who's going to like me? I'm still the guy that's too white or too Black. And at this point, I had changed my persona so much, I didn't even know who I actually authentically was. I came and crashed and burned my senior year. I was taking so many opioids, it was thinning my blood to the point where every time I made contact on the field, my nose was bleeding. And coaches saw that it wasn't allergies. They kicked me off the team. My girlfriend, who I was dating for 4.5 years, left me, got engaged to another man. My girlfriend left. I was out of sports. Nobody was calling me. Nobody was interviewing me. I would no ESPN, no team camaraderie. And then they cut my scholarship and I had to graduate in one semester versus I had 2 additional semesters. So I was taking 23 credits, working 2 jobs, and one was a paid internship. And man, ultimately I just imploded, bro. I went through a depression, tried to starve myself to death, 275 pounds to 219 pounds in 4 weeks. Ultimately ended up in the psychiatric care facility. And it was there that 2 things happened. First thing happened is I found my faith. Second thing that happened is I did my first journal entry, saw my first counselor, saw my first psychiatrist, did my first mindfulness exercise. And I started to notice that, man, these feelings of love and of acceptance and of pride and of achievement that I was getting from sports, I was feeling those same emotions and connections from these mindfulness exercises. I started to learn I can build my life from the inside out and I didn't have to build it from the outside in. Okay, I know I'm articulating your hero's journey here. And so from there, I was like, okay, I know I'm here for a purpose. What that purpose is, I've been running from it. I'm going to step into it. I knew it was around writing and speaking and communicating somehow. So graduated, got my degree in integrated public relations, worked in higher education and communication department. Within 3 years, I was running the largest communication plan that we had. It was freaking crushing it. Part of that team, we won 2 awards in higher education, one for branding and marketing campaign, and the other was for an e-newsletter.
I love it.
Which nobody cares about, but I was super proud about, because if you could take somebody from not caring about an internal communication newsletter to that thing kind of being a staple that people look for, I mean, you can make anything move forward. Right. And so it was a lot of work, man. And therein lies the journey. And from there, I kind of stepped into the season that I'm in now.
What a story.
Yeah.
I'm curious. I want to focus on one thing in there. When you say you made your first journal entry, do you still keep a journal?
I do, just about every day.
How integral do you think that journal has been to your forward success, but also the ability to look back?
The process of journaling is transformative, not just the act of writing things down, but the benefit of starting to develop a level of awareness of how your thoughts are leading your life, how your behaviors are affecting your life, the patterns of your emotions in your life. So even when I'm not journaling, the days I don't journal, I'm still kind of taking that awareness into my reflection, into the way that I move throughout my life and my day. If I wasn't doing that, man, I wouldn't be able to function as that business Buddha. I wouldn't be able to do that because I don't have the awareness. I don't have the insight. I don't have the guidance. I don't have the direction. I'm just kind of white knuckling it to success without real conscious awareness and real emotional connection and integration with self. So it's a very important process to look at what were my emotional spikes throughout the day. What was really causing that? What was really going on? And start to play the game of, hey, man, was my perception off or was it on? And if it was on, what does that say about me? What does that show me about what I believe? What does that show me about what I've created in my life? And if it's off, how can I start to develop awareness for when I think I'm on and I'm off? When I think I'm right and I'm not? When I think I'm doing all the right things, but I'm actually avoiding the main things that there are for me to do. And it's a very powerful practice for people to engage in. I highly recommend it.
So my journal comes out next week, and it's every day you're rewriting that statement of purpose so that you start every day and you don't look back. It's like a game of telephone, right? You don't look back and see what your old one was. It's just you remember what it was, and then you get to watch that change over time. And I think what you said about, there's seasons to these things. And I think if you can get ahead of it and you start to recognize those patterns, like you said, it's so powerful.
100%. 100%.
What's your day-to-day like now? And is it exactly not what you envisioned it to be, but what you want it to be?
Oh, man, that's a good question. It's everything I needed, but almost nothing that I knew that I wanted.
Heard.
And there's a lot of story there. I don't know if we have time to get into it on this episode. Might have to part 2 that one. Essentially, of course, I speak on stages and I do a lot of that stuff. So when I'm not doing that, my typical routine is, I got my routine. I wake up, I do my meditation, I go walk my dog. Dancing is really a big part of one of my practices. And it's an interesting connection between the freedom that we sometimes feel in dance and the lack thereof that we sometimes feel when we communicate. If you think about yourself when you're rocking out to your best and your favorite song, a lot of times you're jamming, you're getting it. I mean, there's just like a lot of personality, there's a lot of energy, a lot of fun, there's a lot of smile, there's a lot of like fluidity and flow. And then we get in speaking, we just turn into these characters that we think that we have to be in order to be like loved and accepted or received or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And a lot of the game is really about me getting more in touch with myself when I don't feel that pressure to perform, so that I can bring that into the things that I communicate from stage and the way that I impact live. Because the more that I'm authentically myself, the more that I use my voice, the more connection that I have with my true nature, the greater, the wider, and the deeper the impact in terms of the lives that are impacted from stage, not just from a business growth perspective, but definitely so, but also from just like, man, quality, man, that was exactly what I needed to hear, when I needed to hear it, in the way that I needed to hear it. So I do that dance practice. And then, I got like have you seen like Michael Hyatt's like full focus planner?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I kind of like have an adapted model of that system, like a work startup routine, like a work shutdown routine, an evening routine. And so I kind of take myself through those. Lots of time with family. I got 4 kids, 3 girls and a boy. Just enjoy life. Dance with my daughters. Like get annoyed because they listen to a lot of girl stuff. Like they're girly.
I saw one has a little budding speaking career starting already. Hey,
dude, it is. Man, if I talk about that too much, I might get emotional, because 9 years old was the time that I had that vision when I saw this sea of people. And I caved and I shut down and I suppressed my voice and I dimmed my light. Ooh. And to be a father and know that at the same age that I was shutting down, my daughter is like speaking in front of, elementary school, middle school, and high school. Such a natural, divine way. It's not like daddy's like, oh, you got to speak. It's just like, can I come? And to watch her do it, and to watch her do it in a way that's better than a lot of people that get paid tons of money to speak. It's nuts. It's bananas. Like, she said some stuff that was actually what the room needed to hear. It wasn't just like, hang in there, something cute that a kid says. It's like, I'm like, dude, I'm fascinated by her and that gift. And then also by my other daughters and their uniqueness and their paths. And it's beautiful to watch, because I had an aunt, she was a twin, and she had 6 different children, and they all did totally different things. One was like 15 languages, worked for the government. The other was a tattoo artist in Detroit. The other one was like a single mom and like ran this like family for this really connected family, so on and so forth, right? They all did something different. She said, when they were young and I saw what they were interested in, I just fed it. I just fed their true nature. And so I took that into my parenting, and man, to watch them individually blossom in their lanes has been so beautiful.
Man, I love that. That you hear so much about kids. I talk about it a little bit in the book, but before the world gets a hold of them and before the world tells them who they're supposed to be, when anything's possible. And I love that story about your aunt, that you took some of that on, because what we could all become if we didn't try to fit into society's boxes, right?
A lot of parents are trying to vicariously live through their children.
My dad did that with me.
Did he?
Yeah.
Also,
that's why I played sports for as long as I did. I wouldn't have played sports. I played baseball all the way into college, and then I ended up coaching baseball. And
oh, wow.
Never would have done that if it wasn't. I remember distinctly bawling my eyes out wanting to quit. It just wasn't something I wanted to do.
Did you know what you wanted to do, or you just knew you didn't want to do that?
So my mom's very artistic, like could do anything with any medium of art, from stained glass to pottery to oil painting to watercolor. It didn't matter what it was. If she touched it, it was beautiful. And my dad, hopefully he doesn't listen to this, but he was a failed athlete. And I don't think he made it past like 7th or 8th grade ball. So it was like for me, I was forced to play baseball because he never got to play baseball. And kind of a much lower level story to yours, I got hurt my junior year. I was a pitcher and a first baseman, and ultimately I was going to have to get surgery that my parents couldn't afford. We grew up with nothing. So I
couldn't play anymore. So I was done, going into my senior year, and then graduated from college and started coaching. I ended up coaching for 11 years, but 5 of my kids went to the majors and 3 to the Indians, to my boys. Anyway,
oh, wow.
At any rate, yeah, I lived that, man. I would have went the more artistic route, and that's what I do now. It's with cars and it's with woodworking. It's that kind of stuff. But I think often about, had I just been able to focus on that stuff the whole way through. And I think that's what you're offering your daughters now,
Yes. Yes, man. And again, man, like, I'm a new parent, you know what I mean? Like this is my first go at it, you know what I mean? So it's not like I ran one all through 20 years and then said, all right, we're ready for the next one. So there's a lot to learn in that, especially because, my parents were never together growing up. I was always joint custody. There was always a financial fight over like who was paying for what. And my dad was, the way I always describe it, he was very physically present, but he was emotionally absent. And me being so filled with emotions, like it was really hard for me to navigate that dynamic in our relationship because I felt like I was a friend, but I wasn't a son. I'm still seeing some of that play out. And even my own parenting, I got to be really, really mindful that I'm not in like, oh, these are friends and we're cool and I'm coach and I'm leader. And I'm not actually like emotionally connected to my children. So I have to be really mindful to make sure that I'm doing that.
What I hear, and correct me if I'm wrong, is it's her kind of raw authenticity and not being afraid of what the people are going to think. Quote, I'm using quotes if you're listening to this. How do you balance that as a speaker? Authenticity versus professionalism and what's expected of you as a professional speaker, your dress, your mannerisms, the things that you bring to the stage.
I'm so glad you asked me that question because it just helped me to realize how far I've come. Because there was a day I would give you like a bunch of tips on how to navigate those spaces. But my answer now is like the most professional thing that I can do is be authentic. A lot of people think that authentic speaking means like all I do is speak my heart and I don't prepare. I have like, great speaking mechanics. I'm just raw and I'm real and I'm vulnerable. And, the way I describe it is that they're like all heart with no head and they're just kind of floating in the ethers. And yeah, will people say thank you? And will there be some really good moments of maybe some tears and some love, some connection? Absolutely. But it's not the most professional, powerful thing you can do. The best thing you can do is let your heart kind of shape the feeling and the emotional arc of your speech and allow your head to structure it with true content to help people to implement the things that are actually your highest beliefs.
The mingling of the technique with the truth.
100%. 100%. It's an interesting dichotomy because we say that thing like, oh, I was all in my head, or I just speak from the heart, and we create this separation. But do you know, like in your physical body, it's not separate. It's a connected system, and it's meant to flow that way through your communication. The other thing about the physical instrument is that there's 2 ears and there's 1 mouth. So a lot of speakers think that speaking is about learning how to speak, but a lot of it, my coach, Les Brown, at one point told me, hey, Darryll, the best speakers are the best listeners. And that's true. You listen to conversations, you start to see like how people actually describe their problems. So it creates custom tailored specificities within your speech. And then in real time, as you're speaking, the ability to listen to the room and read the room is super valuable. We've all had those speakers where they're just like kind of going on and like the room is like totally checked out. Everybody can feel it, but the speaker who's just plugged in about their thing and going through their script and going through their thing. Even if it's an emotional thing, we've seen it on the emotional share. Oh, I'm speaking my heart. And everybody's just like, what am I supposed to do with this? And everybody like, we can feel it. And it's like, okay, this is cool. Now this person's in like their own self-therapy on stage. And I don't want to interrupt because I don't want to be unpolite. And I can't really tell them at the end, hey, I didn't actually learn anything from that because I don't want them to feel bad for the therapy session they just went through on stage. The ability to listen is a powerful thing. The best speakers are the best listeners.
Young entrepreneurs coming up, you're going to give them one piece of advice. What is it?
I hate this question. Because everybody says the same thing, because it's true. Walk in your purpose, know who you are, Be
I don't want that.
authentic.
I don't want that.
Don't settle. Don't sacrifice. Like that is the main thing. And like as much as we say it over and over again, the truth of the matter is, if we're honest with ourselves, there's less than 20% of the population that's living that way.
I'd say less than that.
I would too. I was trying to be nice.
Way less than that.
You know,
I tell people, when people come to work with me privately, almost all entrepreneurs. I have a handful of government or corporate people, but they're almost all entrepreneurs. And they all have a business plan. Every single one of them has a well thought out, well crafted business plan. And when you ask them how many have a personal mission statement or have a statement of purpose, as we put it in our work, 2%. That tells you how many people are living there. They don't even think about it. It's not even on the radar.
Autopilot in the matrix, man.
React, die.
Yep. So as much as I hate saying the same thing that I know a lot of people say, it's so important. The only thing that I do is I address it in story. I say to people that, like, I'm a suicide survivor. And I'm living the life that I tried to end. And it's a crazy thing to think that up until that point of awakening in the psychiatric unit, I only could see a version of my life that I could see. I couldn't see outside of my own awareness. And I think for the people that hear that and they're like, oh, okay, but they know deep down they're not actually living in that. I think that's the pathway in, is to wake up and say, I'm tired of hearing it. I'm tired of it sounding fluffy. I want it to actually be in the fabric of my life. And I don't want to wait till I got a diagnosis. And I don't want to wait till I lose a family member that I never had time to build a real connection with. I don't want to wait till COVID wakes me up. I don't want to wait till life smacks me in the face to go, okay, I'm going to really figure out why I'm here. I'm actually just going to consciously choose. It's like that guy that just like wouldn't let go of sports. Like, I knew it. And I just wouldn't let go of the routine of what I thought my life should look like. But I knew inside. And I think everybody really, really knows, if they're not high, if they're not suppressing with television and drugs and food and all that stuff, I think they deeply know. And it's just like, learn how to hear the whispers so you don't have to hear the screams.
The subtitle of the book is Peace, Prosperity, and the Courage to Change Course in Life and Business. And the reason I chose that as the subtitle is because I don't think people are afraid of change. I think a lot of people know they need to make the change. They're afraid of it being right. They're afraid of it being on purpose, and they don't know how to build the confidence in those decisions to know that it's right or on purpose. They have no barometer. They just kind of poke in the dark. Again, react, die. So, what systems have you built that allow, so you're going to take this gig, or you're going to go into speaking instead of sports. You're going to decide to have children. You're going to, whatever the thing is, what systems has Darryll built that allow you to know that your next decision has a good propensity to be in the right direction?
Yeah. Number one, you got to realize it's hard to read the label when you're inside the bottle. So conscious community is very important. A lot of people's paradigm around friendships or relationships in general is like, they got to like the same things that I like, listen to the same music I listen to, eat the same things I eat, laugh at the same jokes that I laugh at. We got to be exactly alike, or at least have a level of tolerance for the same things that we're comfortable with, even if they're dysfunctional. But it's a powerful thing when I start to put myself in relationships where like iron sharpens iron, where people love me enough to tell me that my breath stink, where people love me enough to be like, hey, like, oh, I know that you're excited about that, but man, like, you're not even really like full out on the one thing that you're doing right now. Why add another thing? Like, community is very important. It's one of the reasons why I pay so much to be in the community I'm in. A lot of it is not like all these nuts and bolts of what I'm learning. It's actually the level of standard that we hold for one another. And when I show up to the call and I'm like, well, I don't know what to do. They're like, if you did know, is it that you don't know, or is it that you're afraid? Oh, no, I mean, I'm not afraid. I worked through my pain. I worked through my trauma. And it's just like, okay, then if you didn't know, what would you be doing? And then you get in the conversation, you find out, oh, yeah, I am afraid. I'm still somehow. And that's very important, man. So community is super, super important. We talked about that journaling practice is super, super important. That spiritual practice, I talked about the dancing. I didn't necessarily talk about the prayer or scripture reading or the meditation or the beholding nature. You have to have something that steals your energy and your inside. Like you have to learn how to become still. And a lot of people are afraid of that stillness because in stillness, it all shows up. You start to see life as is instead of how you perceive. And that's a really big deal of knowing if I'm actually being guided in the right direction of how still am I? The thing about spiritual practices is that people think they're about like this box that I have when I do my thing. It's when I'm worshiping. It's when I'm playing my guitar. It's when I'm dancing with my wife. Like it's when I'm like doing my mantras or I'm kneeling to pray. And like, yeah, so that I can bring that awareness, that texture into the fabric of my everyday moment by moment life. Like spirit, the divine, whatever you call it, doesn't stop just because you ended your prayer. It's like, the universe doesn't stop just because it's like carry it through. Develop that sensitivity throughout your days. It's a really, really, really big deal.
Yeah. I practiced yoga for a long time, long before it was cool. And there was a yoga studio on every corner. I'm like 25 years in now. And that's what it was always about. It's taking that practice out into your day and being able to breathe through things and sit with the uncomfortable things. If you do that every day on your mat, you're able to do that in your life. It's all the same principles, right?
100%.
Well, buddy, I don't want to keep you too much longer. I know you're a busy man. How can people get a hold of Darryll Stinson if they want you to come speak or they want to join that conscious group that you're part of?
Oh man, so DarryllStinson.com, DARRYLL Stinson.com. I know it'll be in the show notes. That's my website around the speaking and stuff. In terms of speaking, getting on stages, they say this. He's like, what do you do? It's like, what I do is I help people grow their business through stages. But what I actually do is help leaders to awaken to the seeds of their divine calling through their vulnerable sharing of their most intimate stories and the powerful advancement of their God-given message. And so if you want to like connect with that thread, just at Stinson Speaks on all platforms.
Amazing. Well, brother, I appreciate your time today. Hopefully we can do it again soon.
Yep. I'm all for it, bro. Appreciate you.
Thanks.